The gunshot echoed across the backyard like thunder. My sister Maria collapsed in her white wedding dress, blood spreading across the fabric our grandmother had worn 50 years earlier. The HOA president stood frozen, smoke still rising from the barrel of her gun, finally realizing what she had done. But Karen Whitmore had no idea that the bride's big brother she just made her enemy was the Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court. What happened next would turn this quiet suburban neighborhood into a battleground for justice, and Karen's life of petty tyranny would come crashing down in ways she never imagined. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story starts 3 months earlier, when my little sister thought she was living her American dream. My name is David Martinez, and I am the Chief Justice of the state Supreme Court. But today, I'm not speaking as a judge. I'm speaking as a brother whose world was shattered on what should have been the happiest day of our family's life. This is the story of how one woman's hatred destroyed everything beautiful in its path, and how justice finally caught up with someone who thought she was above the law. 3 months before that terrible day, my sister Maria was glowing with happiness. At 28, she had found her soulmate in James, kind-hearted high school teacher who loved her with every fiber of his being. They had been planning their dream wedding for over a year, and watching their joy was like seeing the sun come out after a long, dark winter. Maria had always been the light of our family. When our parents died in a car accident when she was just 16, I became her guardian. I was only 25 then, fresh out of law school, and barely keeping my own life together. But I had made a promise to our dying mother. "Take care of Maria," she whispered with her last breath. "She's going to do amazing things." And she was right. Maria worked as a pediatric nurse, saving children's lives every single day. She volunteered at free clinics on weekends, helped elderly neighbors with their groceries, and somehow always found time to bring homemade cookies to new families moving into the neighborhood. She had this incredible gift for making everyone feel special, for seeing the good in people, even when they couldn't see it themselves. 2 years ago, Maria had saved every penny from her nursing salary to buy her first home in Willowbrook Gardens, a beautiful suburban neighborhood with tree-lined streets and well-maintained houses. It was a modest little place with a white picket fence and a backyard perfect for the rose garden she had dreamed of planting. She was so proud the day she got the keys, calling me with tears of joy in her voice. "David, I did it. I actually did it. I'm a homeowner." The house represented everything she had worked for. Growing up as orphans, we never had stability, never had a place that was truly ours. Maria's little house with its rose garden and white picket fence was proof that hard work and determination could overcome any obstacle. She had achieved the American dream through pure grit and kindness, but there was a dark cloud hanging over her paradise, and her name was Karen Whitmore. Karen was the HOA president, a 52-year-old woman with perfectly styled blonde hair, expensive clothes, and nothing better to do than terrorize the neighborhood with petty rules and cruel enforcement. From the day Maria moved in, Karen made her life miserable with a campaign of harassment that would have impressed a military strategist. That it started small, as these things always do. Karen would fine Maria for leaving her car in the driveway for more than 24 hours, even though other neighbors did the same thing without consequence. She complained that Maria's rose garden was too colorful for the neighborhood's aesthetic standards, demanding she plant more subdued flowers that complement our community's sophisticated atmosphere. When Maria painted her front door a cheerful yellow, Karen cited her 4 unauthorized color choices that detract from neighborhood harmony. When Maria hung a small Puerto Rican flag in her window during Hispanic Heritage Month, Karen claimed it violated rules about political displays and non-American symbols. But the most telling incident came when Maria's nursing colleagues threw her a surprise birthday party in her backyard. It was a small gathering, maybe 20 people, and they were careful to keep the music low and clean up every scrap of trash. The next morning, Karen was at Maria's door with a clipboard, demanding to see permits for the unauthorized gathering and threatening fines for disturbing the peace. "Mrs. Whitmore," Maria said politely, "it was just a birthday party. We followed all the noise ordinances, and I don't care what it was." Karen snapped, her eyes cold as winter. "This is a respectable neighborhood, not some place where people can just throw parties whenever they feel like it. There are standards here, standards that some people clearly don't understand." The racist undertone was clear, though Karen was careful never to say anything explicitly that could get her in legal trouble. She was too smart for that, too calculating. But Maria understood. We both did. Karen's hatred wasn't really about noise ordinances or flower colors or flag displays. It was about the fact that a young Latina nurse could afford a house in what Karen considered her exclusive white neighborhood. I learned later that Karen had been researching ways to force Maria out. Almost from the day she moved in, she had contacted other neighbors, trying to turn them against my sister. She had filed complaint after complaint with the city, hoping to find some violation that would give her leverage. She had even looked into property tax assessments, hoping to find some way to make Maria's life financially impossible. But the decent people in Willowbrook Gardens saw right through Karen's schemes. The Johnsons, an elderly couple next door, adored Maria and often asked her to check their blood pressure when they were worried about their health. The Patel family across the street invited her to their children's birthday parties and asked her advice when their youngest had recurring ear infections. Even the Hendersons, a conservative military family, I appreciated how Maria always brought their mail up to the door when they were deployed. Karen's hatred was eating her alive. But it was about to get much worse, because Maria was about to do something that would push Karen completely over the edge. She was going to get married. When Maria announced her engagement to James, I had never seen her happier. They had met at a community health fair where James was volunteering with his students and Maria was providing free blood pressure screenings. "David, he's perfect," she told me, her eyes sparkling with joy. "He's kind and funny, and he makes me feel like the luckiest woman in the world." James was everything Maria deserved, a high school history teacher with a gentle soul and a love for his students that reminded me of Maria's dedication to her young patients. He treated my sister like the precious gift she was, and when he asked for my blessing to marry her, I knew she had found her soulmate. They wanted to have their wedding in Maria's backyard, surrounded by the roses she had planted and tended with such love. It would be intimate and beautiful, a celebration of their love in the place Maria called home. But first, they needed HOA approval. According to the Willowbrook Gardens bylaws, residents needed permission for gatherings of more than 15 people. It was a reasonable rule, designed to prevent disruption to the quiet neighborhood. Maria submitted her request 3 months in advance, following every guideline perfectly. She included detailed plans showing where guests would park, how tables would be arranged, and where the ceremony would take place. She provided a guest list of exactly 80 people, well within the community guidelines. She even hired professional cleanup services and included their contact information. The request was thorough, respectful, and completely by the book. Any reasonable person would have approved it immediately. But Karen Whitmore was not a reasonable person. The rejection letter arrived 2 days later, written in Karen's sharp, aggressive handwriting. "Wedding requests denied. Weddings are too disruptive for our quiet community. The noise, traffic, and general disturbance would be inappropriate for Willowbrook Gardens' peaceful atmosphere. Residents are encouraged to use appropriate venues for large celebrations." Maria was heartbroken. She had dreamed of getting married in her own backyard, surrounded by the roses she had planted herself. The church venue would cost $5,000 they didn't have, and all the deposits for catering and decorations were already paid for the backyard setup. More than that, it felt like another attack on her right to exist in her own neighborhood. But here's the thing that made Karen's hypocrisy crystal clear. She had approved 3 other weddings in Willowbrook Gardens that year. The Morrison wedding, in March, with over 100 guests and a live band that played until midnight. The Chen wedding in June, which included a fireworks display that had the fire department on standby. The Rodriguez wedding, in August, where the reception went until 2 in the morning and half the guests parked on the grass. Because there wasn't enough street parking, all 3 couples were white. All 3 weddings were approved without question. Maria's wedding, with fewer guests and more detailed planning, was rejected immediately. The silence on the other end was deafening. I could practically hear Karen's world shifting as she realized the implications of what I had just said. I didn't know Maria had a brother in the judiciary," Karen stammered, her usual aggressive confidence suddenly nowhere to be found. "My sister deserves the same treatment as any other resident of Willowbrook Gardens," I continued, keeping my voice professional but firm. "I've reviewed the HOA bylaws carefully, and I see no legitimate reason for denying her request. The wedding plans are thorough, respectful, and well within community guidelines. I trust this decision will be reconsidered promptly." I didn't threaten her. I didn't need to. Karen was smart enough to understand that she had just picked a fight with someone who could make her life very difficult if she continued down this path of discrimination and harassment. 3 days later, Maria received a new letter. Upon further review, wedding request approved. All guidelines must be followed precisely. Any violations will result in immediate shutdown of festivities and fines. Even in defeat, Karen couldn't resist one last petty power play. But Maria didn't care. She had her approval, and she was going to have the wedding of her dreams in her own backyard. I should have known that forcing Karen to back down would make her more dangerous, not less. I should have recognized the signs of someone whose hatred was eating them alive from the inside. But I was focused on Maria's happiness, on making sure her wedding day was everything she had dreamed of. I had no idea that Karen was planning something that would turn our celebration into a nightmare. May 15th dawned bright and beautiful, one of those perfect spring days that seemed designed for weddings. Maria woke up at 6 in the morning, practically bouncing with excitement. I had taken the entire week off work to help with final preparations, and seeing my sister so happy made every sacrifice worthwhile. "David, can you believe it's finally happening?" Maria hugged me tight, tears of joy already starting in her eyes. "After everything we've been through, after all the obstacles, I'm actually getting married in my own backyard. You deserve all the happiness in the world, little sister," I whispered back, holding her close and remembering all the times I had comforted her after our parents died, all the nights she had nightmares and I was the only family she had left. Today, she was gaining a husband, and I was gaining a brother. The house buzzed with activity from early morning. Maria's best friends from nursing school arrived to help with decorations and last-minute preparations. James's family came with flowers and supplies, his mother immediately bonding with Maria over shared recipes and wedding traditions. Our neighbors, the decent ones who had always supported Maria, stopped by to offer congratulations and volunteer their help. By noon, the backyard looked like something out of a fairy tale. White chairs were arranged in perfect rows facing a beautiful archway that James and his brother had built and covered in Maria's beloved roses. Twinkling lights were strung between the trees, ready to create a magical atmosphere as evening approached. The caterers had set up elegant tables with crisp white linens and centerpieces made from flowers grown in Maria's own garden. Maria looked absolutely radiant in her wedding dress. A simple but elegant gown that had belonged to our grandmother. It was the same dress our mother had worn when she married our father, and seeing Maria in it brought back a flood of memories. As I helped her with her veil, she looked exactly like our mother had on her wedding day, beautiful and glowing with love. Mom and Dad would be so proud, I told her, my voice thick with emotion. They're here with us today. I can feel it. Maria smiled through happy tears, her hands trembling with excitement. I can feel them too. This is their blessing, isn't it? After everything we've been through, we're finally getting our happy ending. At 3 o'clock, guests began arriving. Extended family members I hadn't seen in years, Maria's colleagues from the hospital, James's students and fellow teachers, and all the neighbors who had come to love my sister. About 80 people in total, exactly as planned and well within HOA limits. Everyone parked exactly where Maria had indicated in her approved plans. The music was kept at reasonable levels. Every detail was perfect and respectful. I walked Maria down the aisle as Pachelbel's Canon in D played softly from the small speaker system James had set up. She was glowing, absolutely radiant with happiness. James waited at the altar with tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed by how beautiful his bride looked. Father Miguel from our childhood church began the ceremony with a warm smile and words of blessing. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Maria and James in holy matrimony. He began, his voice carrying across the quiet backyard. Marriage is a sacred bond, a promise to love and cherish each other through all of life's seasons. That's when I noticed her. Karen Whitmore stood at her second-floor window, staring down at us with pure, undisguised hatred. She was holding something in her hands, but I couldn't see what it was from that distance. Something about her posture, about the intensity of her glare, sent a chill down my spine. I should have paid more attention to that instinct. I should have trusted my gut and called security. But this was my sister's wedding day, and I didn't want to cause a scene over Karen's bitter staring. I thought she was just watching us, hating us from afar, but ultimately powerless to do anything about our happiness. I was wrong. Dead wrong. The ceremony continued beautifully. Father Miguel spoke about love, commitment, and the blessing of family bringing together two souls destined for each other. Maria and James exchanged personal vows that left everyone in tears. Words of love, so pure and genuine that you could feel the sincerity in every syllable. James, Maria said, her voice strong despite the tears streaming down her face. You came into my life when I had given up on finding my soulmate. You see beauty in my scars, strength in my struggles, and love in my imperfections. Today, I promise to love you through every season of our lives, to be your partner in all things, and to build a home filled with laughter, compassion, and endless love, Maria James replied, his voice breaking with emotion. You taught me that love isn't just a feeling. It's a choice we make every single day. You choose kindness when the world is cruel, hope when things seem hopeless, and love when others choose hate. I choose you today and forever, and I promise to spend every day of my life trying to be worthy of the love you give so freely. There wasn't a dry eye in the backyard. Even the tough guys from James's baseball team were wiping away tears. Father Miguel smiled, clearly moved by the genuine love he was witnessing. If anyone has a reason why these two should not be wed, speak now or forever hold your peace, he said. Following the traditional ceremony words that no one ever expects to be interrupted, that's when Karen's voice rang out across the yard like a gunshot. I object. Everyone turned in shock. Karen stood at her back gate, red-faced and shaking with fury. She had changed from her earlier outfit into what looked like military fatigues, and something about her entire demeanor screamed danger. This wedding is illegal, she screamed, her voice carrying clearly across the quiet neighborhood. They're violating noise ordinances, parking regulations, and disturbing the peace of our community. Father Miguel looked confused and concerned. Ma'am, this is a private ceremony on private property, with all proper permits and approvals. I am the HOA president, Karen shrieked, spittle flying from her mouth in her rage. I make the rules here, and I'm telling you, this circus ends now. I stood up from my front row seat, every instinct telling me this was about to get much worse. Ms. Whitmore, you personally approved this wedding. You have no legal standing to interrupt a lawful ceremony. Karen's face turned even redder when she saw me, her hatred laser-focused on the man who had forced her to back down. You threatened me. You used your position to force me to approve this invasion of our peaceful community, the guests murmured uncomfortably, confused by this bizarre interruption. Maria looked mortified, her perfect day being destroyed by this woman's inexplicable hatred. James put a protective arm around her, trying to shield her from Karen's venom. Karen, please, Maria said softly, her nurse's training kicking in as she tried to de-escalate the situation. This is my wedding day. Can't we please have peace for just one afternoon? What happened next will haunt me for the rest of my life. Karen's face contorted with rage, so pure it was frightening to witness. Peace. You people have destroyed the peace of this neighborhood with your loud music, your gaudy decorations, your kind taking over our community. The racist hatred was now completely in the open. Several guests gasped in shock. James stepped forward protectively, but I was already moving toward Karen. That's enough, I said firmly, my voice carrying the authority of years on the bench. You need to leave immediately, or I'll have you arrested for disturbing the peace. Don't you dare tell me what to do in my own neighborhood, Karen screamed, completely unhinged now. You think you can intimidate me with your fancy job? You think you can force your way into our community and make us accept you? Then she pulled something from behind her back that made my blood turn to ice. A gun. The wedding guests screamed and dove for cover behind chairs and tables. I immediately moved to shield Maria, but she pushed me aside, her nursing instincts making her want to help rather than hide. Karen, please, Maria pleaded, her hands raised peacefully. Put the gun down. This is insane. We can work this out. But Karen was beyond reason now, beyond anything that resembled human decency. You want to ruin everything I've worked for. You move into our neighborhood, you ignore our rules. You think your big-shot brother can intimidate me. Well, let me show you what happens to people who don't belong here. Karen, listen to me, Maria said, using the same gentle voice she used with frightened children in the hospital. I know you're hurting. I know you're scared of change. But we don't have to be enemies. We can be neighbors. We can find peace together, even facing a gun. My sister was trying to heal, trying to help, trying to find common ground with someone who wanted to destroy her. That's who Maria was. That's the beautiful soul that was about to be extinguished by hatred. I don't want your peace, Karen snarled, the gun shaking in her hands. I want you gone. The sound of the gunshot was deafening. Maria crumpled to the ground in her white wedding dress, blood immediately spreading across the fabric. Time seemed to stop. James screamed and fell to his knees beside her. Father Miguel dropped his Bible and rushed forward. Guests were crying and calling 911. I dropped my phone and ran to my sister, pressing my hands against the wound in her chest, trying to stop the bleeding that was soaking through our grandmother's dress, the same dress our mother had worn, now stained with my sister's blood. Stay with me, Maria, I whispered, tears streaming down my face. Stay with me. The ambulance is coming. Her eyes found mine, unfocused, but still so full of love. David, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I love you. I love you too. You're going to be okay. You're going to be fine. But even as I said the words, I could see the life leaving her eyes. The bullet had hit her heart, and all the medical training in the world couldn't fix damage that severe. Karen stood frozen, the gun still in her hands, finally understanding what she had done. The hatred that had consumed her for so long had led to this moment, and now there was no taking it back. The ambulance arrived 7 minutes later, but it felt like hours. The paramedics worked frantically, but I could see it in their faces. The damage was too severe, the blood loss too extensive. Maria died in James's arms at 4:23 p.m., surrounded by the roses she had planted with such love, wearing our grandmother's dress on what should have been the happiest day of her life. Karen was arrested at the scene, finally snapping out of her shocked trance to keep repeating, I didn't mean to. I just wanted them to leave. I didn't mean to kill her, but she did mean to. She had brought a loaded gun to intimidate my sister on her wedding day. The intent was absolutely clear. As Chief Justice, I immediately recused myself from Karen's case, but I made sure the investigation was thorough and professional. What they found was even worse than I had imagined. Karen had been stockpiling complaints about Maria for months, documenting every tiny violation she could imagine or invent. She had researched ways to force Maria to sell her house, contacted other neighbors trying to turn them against my sister, and even looked into property tax assessments hoping to make homeownership financially impossible. Most damning of all, the Johnson's security camera footage showed Karen practicing with the gun in her backyard the week before the wedding. This wasn't a moment of spontaneous rage. This was premeditated terrorism designed to force Maria out of the neighborhood. With the wedding providing the perfect excuse, Karen had been waiting for. Karen was charged with first-degree murder with hate crime enhancements, along with terroristic threatening and weapons violations. Despite my recusal, I attended every day of the trial, sitting in the gallery with James and our extended family, watching justice slowly work its way through the system. Karen's defense team tried to paint her as a concerned citizen who made a tragic mistake. They claimed she only meant to scare Maria, not kill her. that the gun discharge was accidental in the heat of the moment. But the evidence was overwhelming. The premeditation, the racist statements witnessed by 80 wedding guests, the security footage of her practicing with the gun, the months of systematic harassment, it all painted a picture of calculated hatred that had finally boiled over into murder. District Attorney Sarah Chen delivered a powerful closing argument that brought tears to my eyes. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Karen Whitmore didn't just kill Maria Martinez. She killed a dream. She killed a love story. She killed a young woman whose only crime was being Hispanic in what Karen considered her neighborhood. This wasn't an accident. This was hate, pure and simple, and hate has consequences. The jury deliberated for only 2 hours before returning a guilty verdict on all counts. 3 weeks later, I sat in the courtroom as Judge Patricia Williams prepared to sentence Karen. As Chief Justice, I couldn't preside over the case, but I had the right to give a victim impact statement. Standing at that podium, looking at Karen for the first time since that horrible day, I spoke from the heart about what her hatred had cost our family. Your Honor, Karen Whitmore took more than my sister's life. She took our family's future. Maria was planning to start a family with James. She wanted children, wanted to fill her house with laughter and love and the sound of little feet running through those rose gardens. Karen stole that future from all of us. Maria was a pediatric nurse who saved children's lives every day. She volunteered at free clinics, helped elderly neighbors with their groceries, and brought homemade cookies to new families moving into the neighborhood. She made the world better just by being in it, and now that light has been extinguished forever. Karen claimed she was protecting her community, but she destroyed it. She turned a place of peace into a place of terror. She showed that hatred can live anywhere, even behind white picket fences and manicured lawns. My sister died trying to make peace with the woman who killed her. Even facing a gun, Maria offered compassion and understanding. That's who she was. That's the beautiful soul Karen snuffed out because of her own poisonous heart. I ask this court not just for justice, but for a message. A message that hate has consequences. A message that no one has the right to terrorize their neighbors because of their race or ethnicity. A message that Maria Martinez mattered, that her life had value, and that her death will not be forgotten. Judge Williams sentenced Karen to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Aftermath was devastating for everyone who loved Maria. James couldn't bear to stay in her house after the trial. Surrounded by memories that were now too painful to endure, he sold it and moved back to his hometown in Oregon, carrying his grief like a stone in his chest that would never fully heal. The new owners are a lovely young black family who had no idea what had happened there. I didn't have the heart to tell them about the blood that had soaked into the soil where they now play with their children. They planted new flowers where Maria's roses had grown, and sometimes I drive by just to remember the sister I lost and the dreams that died with her. Today marks 6 months since Maria's death, and I'm still struggling to function in a world without her light. The other justices have been understanding, taking on extra cases so I can grieve. James calls every Sunday, and we don't talk much, just share the silence of missing someone who meant everything to us. He tells me he dreams about her every night. Always the same dream. Their wedding day, but in the dream, Karen never shows up with the gun. In the dream, they say I do, and dance under the twinkling lights until the stars come out, and Maria's laughter fills the air. I dream about her too. But in my dreams, I'm faster. I get to Karen before she can pull the trigger. I save my little sister, and she gets to live the beautiful life she deserved. Karen's actions created ripples that spread far beyond our family. The HOA was disbanded after multiple residents came forward about Karen's harassment and discriminatory enforcement. A federal investigation found years of civil rights violations that had gone unchecked because no one wanted to challenge the system. The story made national news. HOA president murders bride at wedding became a symbol of how hatred can hide behind bureaucracy and property values. Civil rights organizations used Maria's story to push for stronger hate crime legislation and better oversight of HOA governance. But none of that brings my sister back. Last month, I established the Maria Martinez Foundation for Community Healing. We work to combat housing discrimination and support families affected by hate crimes. It's small comfort, but it's something positive growing from this tragedy. James surprised me by volunteering as our first community outreach coordinator. Maria always said you fight hatred with love, he told me through his tears. Maybe we can honor her by bringing communities together, instead of tearing them apart. We're organizing workshops about recognizing and reporting housing discrimination. We're training mediators to help resolve neighbor disputes before they escalate into violence. We're creating safe spaces for people to share their experiences with harassment and find support. It's what Maria would have wanted. Even in death, she's still trying to heal the world. I keep Maria's wedding dress in my closet, professionally cleaned and preserved. Sometimes I look at it and remember how radiant she was that morning, how excited and full of hope for the future she would never see. The caterers never got paid. I told them to donate the food to homeless shelters instead. The flowers wilted in the evidence locker. The twinkling lights were tangled with crime scene tape. But the love remains. James carries it. I carry it. Everyone who knew Maria carries a piece of her light forward into a world that desperately needs more compassion and less hatred. As I write this, I'm preparing for another case, a housing discrimination suit where an HOA is trying to force out a Muslim family. The pattern is always the same. Petty rules enforced selectively. Harassment disguised as policy enforcement. Fear masked as concern for property values. But now I know the stakes. I know where this hatred can lead when it's allowed to fester and grow unchecked. I've seen the blood on the wedding dress, heard the screams of a groom watching his bride die in his arms. Every case is Maria's case now. Every victim of housing discrimination is my sister. Every act of hate is a bullet fired at all of us. Karen thought she was protecting her neighborhood, but she destroyed it. She thought she was defending her values, but she revealed them to be hollow and poisonous. She thought power came from intimidation and fear. But true power comes from lifting others up, not tearing them down. Maria understood that. Even as she lay dying, she looked at me with love, not hatred. Even facing her killer, she offered peace, not war. That's the world we're fighting for now. Maria's world, a world where wedding days end in joy, not tragedy. Where neighbors celebrate each other's happiness instead of sabotaging it. Where love really does win in the end, even when it costs everything to prove it. The battle continues. The foundation grows. Justice marches forward, one case at a time, one family at a time, one community at a time. And somewhere, I believe, Maria is watching and smiling. Proud that her death wasn't in vain, that her love lives on in the work we do every day to build the world she believed was possible. Karen Whitmore thought she had the power to destroy a family, a community, a dream. But she was wrong. Love is stronger than hate. Hope is more powerful than fear. And my sister's light shines on, even in the darkness Karen left behind. The wedding may have ended in tragedy, but the love story continues. It continues in every life we save, every family we help, every heart we heal. That's Maria's true legacy. Not the way she died, but the way she lived. Not the hatred that killed her, but the love that survives her, grows stronger every day, and will ultimately triumph over the darkness that tried to destroy it.